Greetings to all our beautiful listeners on this beautiful Thursday. This is the day that the Lord has made for us to rejoice and be glad in it. And indeed, we are glad. Welcome to Living a Victorious Life, sponsored by Empowerment Podcast, where we use the Word of God to equip, inspire, and empower you to live victoriously. I believe you are having a great day. I believe all is well concerning you as well. Just a reminder that we are now available on social media platforms. We do have a Facebook page, Empowerment Podcast. Please like and follow our page. We are also available on Instagram. Please follow us. We will try our utmost best to follow you back. We are also now available on TikTok, the new thing. It's Empowerment Podcast. We also have a YouTube channel, Empowerment Podcast. You are more than welcome to subscribe to it. We also are available on WhatsApp on our number, which is 065 615 6641. 065 615 6641. You are more than welcome to send us any feedback that you have for us. We really appreciate the feedback that we are receiving. It's so positive and it is so encouraging. As you know, my name is Sphumelele Mabuya, and I am your host for today. I am not alone. I have a guy who is family to this living a victorious life. You all know him, so he's not even a surprise anymore because this is like his second home. So I would like to welcome him, and I will allow him to greet the listeners as well. Welcome, Mr. Oda.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome once again. Greetings to all our listeners, wherever you are listening us at, whatever time of the day. I hope you're having a great day, you're having a great time. Greetings to you. It is Lunga, Mr. Odokumalo, who's sending us greetings, and I hope you are going to have a great time with us in this session. And yeah, let us get straight to it. I believe everybody knows me by now, so yeah, it is me again.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lunga, for coming back to our episode. How are you today? You didn't tell us how you are doing. How have you been? Are you well? Are you safe? Is your family well? Testify. How are you doing?
Hey, come on now. Okay, I'm good. God has been good. He has kept us safe in his shadow of his wings. We are safe. We are secured. Everyone is healthy and kicking. And I hope also our listeners are safe at home. And if ever you have encountered a difficult situation, we are hoping and believing that this podcast has been a great help in empowering you and giving you hope. But for me and my family, we are safe under the shadow of God's wings. Yes, we are alive and kicking.
Thank you, Mr. Oda. That's good to hear. It's only because of God's faithfulness that we are not consumed. So, Mr. Oda, today we are starting a new series that we are calling The Life of a Victim. So we'll be talking about how one becomes victorious in their day-to-day activities. So I have a case study that I would like to begin with, a case study about my favorite character in the Bible, David. So the Bible tells us that David was a young man. He was a shepherd. So in one instance, he is called to go give his brothers some food. And then in a battle, when he gets there, there's a Philistine who is rude, who is arrogant, and who intimidates everybody. And then David asks, okay, what would be given to a man who defeats this guy, this giant guy? And mind you, David was very young at that time. The Bible tells us he was just a handsome young man. And then his brothers start answering him harshly, like, "You go back, what are you doing here? You don't need to be here. You can't do anything. You can't solve anything. But David doesn't mind them. He still persists on asking, who is this guy who is defying the army of God like this? And then he tells them that he wants to take on this challenge. And the Bible tells us that he only had like a stone, and the guy and the enemy, Goliath, was just robed in fighting regalia. But then David didn't have anything on. They tried giving him another tunic, like to put him in a better position. But then the Bible tells us that it was too big for David, so he could not use it. And then the Bible further tells us that David defeated this Goliath. So the small, young, handsome guy is the one who defeated this giant Goliath. So now we see that David was a victorious man, but we also understand that he was victorious in the midst of rejection, because his brothers were not so welcoming when they saw him, but then he didn't mind them. He focused on what he wanted to do. We further see him growing up. We are told that he served under Saul, and he was Saul's son, best friend, Jonathan, and we see how he was just so successful in serving there. But the Bible further tells us that he also faced challenges there. Saul turned against him. He wanted to kill him. But then David, women even sang a song about him, that David has killed 10,000 while Saul has killed 1,000. So we see that David was a victorious man. But even though that we see David was a victorious man, we also see that his life was not without challenges. So that is the first thing that we know, that a life of a victor is not without challenges. But having challenges does not mean that you do not become victorious. Facing rejection does not mean that you don't need to be victorious. So that is the first thing we learn from David's life. I don't know if is there anything you want to add on that before we tackle this any further, because I was just introducing the character of David.
Thank you for such a great intro into it. I'm amazed because while I have prepared for the show, it is similar. It is a similar thing as what you're touching. And I like how you're putting it when you're saying a life of a victor is never without a challenge.
Oh, yes.
In fact, we are called victors because we faced challenges and we overcame them. Oh, we are not called victors because we are living a smooth life, but we are called victors because we have faced something and we have overcame it. When I introduced living a victorious life through faith, I said, victory comes after dominance. In other words, you need to be dominant into something, then victory will come. If we could go back to the book of Genesis chapter 1, where it says, and God said unto them, let them dominate. When God said we should dominate, he gave us, first of all, a challenge that we need to overcome. And secondly, he gave us victory that is beyond the challenge. So if we could understand the fact that for us to dominate does not only come with us dominating as the description of the word to dominate, but it also comes as whenever you're facing challenges, you need to also apply dominance and become victorious after you have dominated each and everything that you're encountering. So I like when you're saying a life of a person who's victorious or a life of a victor is never without a challenge. In fact, it is the challenges that make us to become victors. If we could look even the life of David, as you just put it, his life was very hectic. He had a lot of challenges that he faced. He faced Goliath, you've mentioned it, he faced a bear and a lion. And in everything, he was dominant. And after his dominance came victory, and for him to be called a victor, it is because of that. And if we could understand that a life of a victor or a life of a person who wants to live a victorious life, there are things that you're going to face that would have to be dominant over. Use what God has given unto you. Use what God has put in. He has described it in your DNA. It is in you. When God created you, he said, let them dominate. In other words, it is in you to dominate. Now, when we're saying it is in you to dominate, then we're also saying it is in you to also to be a victor.
Oh, yes, that is so powerful, Mr. Lunga.
I'll stop there for now.
All right, no problem. You know what I'm reminded of? You're talking about how David faced the bear and the lion, and then he faced Goliath. I'm just thinking that the life of a victor involves fighting private battles and then fighting public battles as well. David fought the lion and the bear privately. There was no one to clap for him when he conquered the lion and the bear. But then he also faced a public battle where he faced Goliath, and then there were women singing about him, which means that if you want to live victoriously, you do not only have to conquer private battles, you also have to conquer public battles. Some of the battles that you will have to conquer in life are battles that we will not see you fighting, and we will not be there to clap for you. But it does not mean that you do not have to fight. It does not mean that you do not have to conquer. So you conquer in your private space. You conquer things that the public does not know about, and you also have to conquer things where we will be there cheering you on. But then our absence does not mean that you do not have to be victorious. You can still be victorious even privately. And those private victories, private successes, they also equip you for the public battles that you have to face. So never ever undermine the battles that you conquer on your own when no one is watching. Never ever undermine like the negative thoughts that you conquer on your own. Never ever undermine how you rise up when you don't even feel like waking up. Never undermine those things, because those things lead up to the public victories where we will also be there to clap for you.
I like it when you're talking about the private battles and the public winning. If you could remember that when David faced Goliath, he reminded Goliath of his private winnings.
Oh, yes.
In other words, his private winnings or his private battles, they gave him confidence that even in the public, God can still be reliable. God can still be trusted that he will win. Because this thing of him being a victor did not come when he saw Goliath, but it came even when he was alone in the wilderness.
True that.
Hence, he was able to draw a testimony of his private battles and use them into winning his public battles. There are a lot of us that underestimate, private battles that no one will clap hands for you on. And we rush into engaging in fights where everyone will see our victory. Whereas the greatest battle that I'm convinced that a bear and a lion was much stronger than Goliath. Yet for David to conquer a bear and a lion, he had to use his own hands. But for David to conquer Goliath, he had to use nothing but a stone. And yet the stone, and I'm puzzled how God does this. Whenever the battle are going to be public, God shows off. Oh, yeah. But whenever the battles are in private, God shows up.
Nice.
Whenever the battles are going to be in public, God shows off. He used a stone to kill a man that was scared. And when the battles are private, God shows up. He uses bare hands to tear up the lion. So it is very important that we put the same respect into our public battles as much as we put respect into our private battles. Because if we could be faithful to God in our private battles as much as we will be faithful into him whenever he's taking us through our public battles, he will definitely show up,
Yes, that's such a powerful observation, Mr. Oda. Yeah, indeed, it's such like a pleasure to have you today. But then I just want to ask you as well now, do you have any example of how you faced an unfavorable circumstance in your life and how did you overcome it? So do you have an example of how you live victoriously on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I think before we began the show, I told you something that wasn't good for a guest to come saying that they are underprepared. And the reason for that, it is because of the question that I saw you giving me that said, what are the question that said the examples of how you faced an unfavorable circumstance in your life and how you overcame. I stopped there to write. And the reason why I stopped there to write it is because I did not know which one to take from everything God has done. With this, I'm not showing off that God has done so much, but He has done so much, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm out of words when that gave me an opportunity to think and reflect and to look into what God has done in my life. Even when I tried to complain and cry, I was puzzled as to God has done so much for me. And it is not with my power, not with my ability, but it is by His grace and mercy.
Oh, yeah.
You know, one example that I'll give to our listeners, then I won't take much of their time. When I was born, back then, I won't state my years again, but when I was born with a condition where my heart had a hole.
Okay.
It happened when I was born.
Okay.
So I had a heart condition, if we may put it, you know. And with this heart condition, I lived with it. Blood was leaking, and my parents, when they tell me, they say it happened for about 5 months. I was even at home growing up, you know, and I would now and then keep on crying, and they'll never understand what is happening, you know. And eventually they said, no, we need to take this child to the doctors and start checking what's happening. This is the unfavorable circumstance now I'm talking about. When I went to the doctor said, how is this child still alive?
Oh, my word.
Because when he was born, he had this condition, and it has been happening for some time, you know. And how is he still alive, you know? And even my condition, I'm always puzzled when thinking about this, even when I look at the pictures of myself when I was young, when I was like 2 years, a few months old, you know, because from those pictures, you can never tell that I was going through such a thing, you know. And they started doing surgeries and everything. To cut the long story short, okay, I did a surgery. It was successful, and praise be to God. And another amazing thing to that is that even today, we don't know who was the doctor who did that surgery.
Yeah.
But it's a story for another day. Fast forward to 2012. 2012, I got saved. And when I got saved, the heart condition came back. When it came back, I had to go back to the doctors. They said I need to do the surgery again. I had to do the surgery again. They said I need to go to the x-rays and all of those things, you know, to start checking up what's happening. And do I really need to go to surgery, or is it something that could be fixed without me going to surgery that will just need medication? So I went on all of those scans and everything. And I was so exhausted from this because back in 2012, it came back strong. I was weak. I couldn't go to school. I couldn't do anything. It was very strong and hectic when it came back. Okay, no problem. It came back, and I started going to the doctors now and then. And when I came back one day from the doctors from one of the x-rays, they told me that, yes, you'll have to do a scan and everything and whatnot. I came back and I told my parents, okay, I left with my mother to the hospital, and then I came back, I told my father, who was not there, who was at work. I told him about the results and everything that they said. And he said to me, son, go to your room and talk to your God. And those words really struck me because, you know, I was like, what is this guy saying? And mind you, the bill for this to happen, it was very huge for the bill for the surgery and everything. It was very huge. I then said, okay, let me give it a try. Remember, I'm a newborn believer. I don't know that much. I've just been all my life a pastor's kid. I know nothing. I just know that my father is a pastor and that's it. But for me, no, I'm just new into this and I'm just giving it a try, you know.
You think you're a grandchild?
When I went to my room, I started, you know. And when I went to my room, I was like, okay, God, we need to do something. That is what I said, you know. And I just ran out of words after that. Tomorrow we had to go back and collect more results because some of the results came back that day and the other were going to come up the following day, the blood and all of those things. We went back, and when we went back, the doctor that received the results said, why are you here? And I was like, the results are before you. What do you mean by my hair? He said, the way or the results that came back, they are not even showing that you've ever had a surgery before.
Oh, sure.
So
my
now,
God.
these results that are coming out, they are not only showing that I need a surgery now, but they are showing that even before I never had it. in a way, she did not believe what she was seeing in such a way that she said, I'm putting you on x-ray again. We are retesting you to see if are we still going to find the same thing. Fast forward again, a long story, it was the same results. The results showed that I've never had a surgery. But if you could look at my body, you could see the marks, that the stitches and everything. But the results on the x-ray, they never show that I've ever had a surgery. So I believe that it was God who did that.
Yeah.
You know, that miracle will always be a remarkable thing in my life. You know, because whenever I think about it, I'm like, God, you did that. And even today, and remember that I said I went there because even my body was showing that I need another surgery or something, but I need help. I'm not well. But after that prayer, when I said, God, do something, God definitely showed up and he showed off, you know, because after those results, after that when the doctor said, you are not even, there's nothing that shows that you have ever had a surgery before. It was like she was ministering some healing even unto me, you know, even unto my mind. Because when I came out, I was all fine. I went back to school. I finished my grade that I was doing at that year. I passed. You know, life just went back to normal. There was like a switch button that's been turned on or something. And I'm like, God, how did you do this? You know, it is something. And that situation really got me hard. Because I had months not have been to school. But when God showed up, and he definitely showed off, because even that year I passed. And not just passed, but I passed better than kids that were able to go to school from January to December, you know. And I moved on even to the next grade. So that for me remains as a remarkable thing that God has done in my life.
Yeah, that is such a remarkable story, Lunga. You know, things that I took from your story, you talked about how you were victorious even as a baby, because you said that this heart condition started when you were born. So even for the first 5 months of your life, you were victorious. So you didn't even know what was going on, but already you had started living victoriously, which means that this thing of living victoriously is not something that starts at a certain point. Even from the day you are born, you encounter challenges. So indeed, the life of a victor is not without challenges. You even talk about how your dad said, go speak to your God. I love that. It means that your dad was teaching you that victory does not come from me, son. Victory does not come from your mom, son. Go to your God. Exactly. He is responsible for the victory over your life. He is responsible for your healing process. There is nothing that we can do, but you have to speak to your God for your own self. And I like what they did, that they made you fight this battle on your own. They didn't want to fight it for you. They didn't want to take decisions for you. They didn't want to be the only ones going to God on your behalf, but they let you do it, which means that the life of a victor involves taking responsibility. You were still a child. You could have easily cried. You could have easily complained, but then you went to your room and you prayed to your God. And that shows that you took responsibility for your life. And that is what a victor does. They take responsibility for their own life. I love how you faced the situation. I love how you went to the doctor. I love how you didn't give up. Because if you had given up, you wouldn't have allowed God to perform this miracle. You wouldn't be here today. So which means that we need to face our circumstances. We need to face those things that are troubling us. We don't need to run away from them, because if we run away, we deprive ourselves of such testimonies. If you complain and you just gave up and you're just like, okay, I'm just ready to die. People older than me with heart conditions are already dying. Who am I? What can I do? Obviously, I'm going to die as well. But I love how you didn't have that mentality, but you had the mentality of David, which, you guys are scared of Goliath, you guys are intimidated, but I am not. So that's what you did as well. Like, okay, I hear about heart conditions, you know the severity of it, you see how you are suffering even at school, you see how your mates are progressing, and here you are weak, but then you're just like, okay, fine, I'm just going to confront this. And when you confronted it, you got the victory. I love your story so much, Mr. Lunga. And thank you also for not giving up. Thank you for allowing God to use your test as a testimony. Today, I'm sure some of our listeners are facing sickness, but now you have told us that there is victory over illnesses. There is victory over any kind of heart condition. So thank you so much, Mr. Lunga, for that. Now, I'm thinking, here I am. I'm discouraged. I do not know where to start, but I want to be a victor now. I've been a victim for too long. I've been suffering for too long. I've been sitting in my shell for too long. But now, no, I want to conquer. I want to conquer depression. I want to rise above unemployment. I want to rise in my life. How do I do it? Where do I start? What are some of the habits that I need to develop?
Thank you so much for this question. And first of all, living a victorious life or living a life of a victor, it has to be a lifestyle, or it's a lifestyle, not that it has to be, it's a lifestyle. It is something that gets built or instilled in you. It is not something that you could wake up and just say you are doing it. So it is something that needs time. It is something that needs communion with. It is something that needs to be built in you, to grow in you, you know. Because the truth is, not everybody could face circumstances, you know. Some of us are made, they call it soft life, you know, sweet life problems, you know. Some of us, you know, have been growing in situations where we have our parents protecting us, covering us.
Yes.
And, you know, some of us have been growing in situations where we are even anxious of not even knowing, you know, whenever we are put in a situation where we do not know what is yet to come, we find ourselves, you know, being very anxious and depressed. Well, the life of a victor, it's a life that is full of uncertainties, you know, it's full of circumstances that are very unfavorable.
True.
We mentioned even the life of David, and if you could look at his life, it was very had a lot of unforeseen circumstances that came to him, you know. But in all, that's why it is very important for you to start living a life of a victor. You need to first build a relationship with God. You can never say you're living a life of a victor if you do not have a strong relationship with God, you know. Well, I don't know if I'm there yet or not, living a life of a victor, but I believe that with some of the things that God has been doing in my life, I'm on that pathway today, you know. And with these words, I believe that if we could rely on God and stick to God and trust in God, you know, and build that relationship with Him and allow God to test us. Sometimes we want God to trust us, yet we don't want God to test us, because God can only trust us once He has tested us, you know. And that is something we normally overlook as people, yet we want to become victors, you know. And you know, there's a verse that for me, it describes a habit that a person who wants to live who lives a victorious life lives by. The verse that says, many are the plans in a man's heart, but God's will prevail. A victor's life is rooted and instilled in the habit of knowing that I might have a plan, but even in my plan, God's will has to prevail. Even in my ideas, God's will has to prevail. I'm sure David had a lot of dreams that he wanted to pursue. He loved music, you know, he had a lot of things going on for him. But in all of his things, he allowed God's will to prevail. And that is a life of a victor.
Yeah.
A life of a victor is established in making God's will and purpose. In fact, a victor is a person who says or believes in that I am born for a purpose, to serve a purpose, and for a purpose. And that purpose it is to serve God. in whatever way God wants me and in whatever direction He directs me to. So if we could have that in us and have that understanding, I believe those are the habits and those are the things or the mentality that most people who believe that they're living a life of a victim live by. And the last thing that is important, it is very much important, and it will help you in your journey of being a victim. It is understanding the verse that says, it all works together for the good to those, who trust and obey the Lord. So it is very much important for one to understand that, even in anything that will happen in your life, it could be favoring you or not favoring you, because it will either be a win or a lesson. Because victors, remember that, victors, I said earlier on, victory is something that is instilled in us. So we are always winning, because if we're not winning, then we're learning. We don't lose. Victors don't lose, but victors, they either win or they learn.
Oh, yes. We are learning, we are not losing. I love that. Thank you, Mr. Lunga. Yeah, this is just the introduction to the Life of a Victor series. I can imagine what we will be talking about next week if we are starting with such powerful truth. These are life-changing lessons, you know that. And I'm just so blessed by what you are saying, that God cannot trust you if He has not tested you. So if you want to be victorious, you have to be prepared to be tested as well. Because how can you trust someone that you have not tested? And God is able to turn our tests into testimonies only if we allow Him. There's a verse that I want to read that also sums up the life of a victor. It's found in Philippians 3 verse 13. It says, "Brothers and sisters, I don't consider myself yet to have taken hold of it. But this one thing I do, forgetting what is behind and pressing toward what is ahead." This is what I want to say. We've all had past challenges. We've all had past lessons that we considered as failing. But this is now what we should do. We should press on toward what is ahead. We cannot change what happened yesterday. We cannot change with the pain that we incurred yesterday, but we can definitely change the future. So if we want to change the future, we need to change our focus. We need to stop focusing on what defeated us yesterday. We need to forget our past failures. We need to take only this lesson and go forward. We need to focus on what is ahead of us, focus on our dreams, focus on what we want to pursue in our life, focus on God's purpose. And what I love about God's purpose, it is just so much greater than our pain. It's so much greater than our past failures. It is greater than any unfavorable circumstance. And the more we focus on it, the more we realize that what we faced yesterday is nothing compared to the glory that is coming tomorrow. So this is what I want to end with. Let us press on toward what is ahead of us. Let us focus on God's purpose more than our past failures. Yesterday is gone. There is absolutely nothing that we can do about it. Let us change our mentality now, and let us just focus on what tomorrow has in store for us. Let us take the lessons from our past experiences, but let us just take the lesson only. Let's leave the pain there. Let's leave the hurt. Let's leave the anger there. Take the lesson and move forward. So thank you so much, Mr. Lunga, for joining us today. Next week, we'll be talking about being victorious in business. We'll be talking about being victorious in the workplace. We'll be talking about being victorious at home. So we'll just be focusing on how a victor lives their lives. So victors are working, victors have businesses, victors also have homes. So we want to focus on the different aspects with how do you become victorious in business now? How do you become victorious at home? How do you become victorious in the workplace? So we'll be looking at that in depth in the following weeks. Do you have any closing remarks, Mr. Lunga?
Thank you so much, Sphumelele, for inviting me to your show. I believe listeners don't know that I'm no longer part of the show as the host, but I'm coming now as a guest. Thank you so much for that. And I believe that we'll be continuing to be invited here to share some of the things and continue to do the work that I'm now doing. But overall, for the listeners, I would just like to say, victors are people who understand perspective. Victors are people who rely on God. And victors are the people who know that in life, if we could be faithful to God in private, God will definitely show up. And if we could stand for God in public, God will definitely show up. So these are the things we need to understand. And we need to also clarify that whenever God shows off for you, he's not showing off for you, but God is showing off for himself. Remember that God, whenever he puts you in a situation, it's for him to receive the glory over that situation. So we should never confuse what God is doing in our lives for him doing it for us, but should always remember that whatever God is doing in our life as victors is doing it for his glory. There are a lot of testimonies that I could share of God doing his great things for me, but I know when I'm clear with it that God, whenever he does something, he's giving me tools and opportunities for him to receive the glory and for him to receive the honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lunga. When God shows off, he is not showing off for you, but he's showing up for himself. I love that so much. If you are faithful to God in private, he will show up. And if you are faithful to God in public, he will show up. I love that so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Lunga, for joining us. Just a reminder that we also have an episode tomorrow, Pioneers of Greatness with Nompilo Zoe. And then on Saturday, we have Youthful and Impactful with Yanga, the MC. And we end the week with Soulful Talks with Nokbonga Mkabela and Tandazani Zulu. From myself, Sphumelele Mabuya. Have a great Thursday. It was such a great pleasure to be talking to you today. You are more than welcome to send us any feedback, any comments on all our social media platforms. Have a great day. We love you so much. Don't forget that the life of a victor is not a life without challenges, but it is a life where challenges are encountered, but challenges are overcame. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye, Mr. Lunga. Bye to our listeners as well.
Thank you.